All praise is due to Allah, Lord of the worlds. We praise Him, we seek His help, and we turn to Him in repentance. We send blessings and peace upon the final messenger, his family, his companions, and all who follow the path of goodness until the last day. My dear brothers and sisters, there are moments in life when words feel too small for the weight in our hearts. Moments when pain lingers, when doors appear closed, when answers seem delayed, and the soul feels heavy. In those moments, Allah has not abandoned you. In fact, He is inviting you closer. He is calling you to a level of connection beyond routine words, beyond hurried supplications, into a state where the heart speaks before the tongue. This is what it means to pray in the Spirit until something breaks. Prayer is not meant to be a transaction where we list our needs and walk away. Prayer is a meeting with the Most Merciful. When you stand before Allah, you are standing before the one who knows your fears before you name them, who understands your tears before they fall, who is aware of your wounds even when you hide them from the world. When prayer becomes spiritual, sincere, and persistent, it begins to reshape you before it reshapes your circumstances. Many people give up too early. They make du'a once or twice and say, I tried. But the believers of strength are those who stay on the prayer mat, those who return again and again, those who whisper, cry, remain silent, and repeat their call to Allah until the heart softens and the burden begins to lift. Something always breaks first. Sometimes it is the problem, sometimes it is the ego, sometimes it is the fear, sometimes it is the attachment to what Allah is asking you to release. When you pray in the Spirit, you are not rushing, you are not checking the time, you are not performing for people, you are speaking honestly, you admit your weakness, you confess your exhaustion, you acknowledge that without Allah, you are lost. And this humility is powerful. Allah loves the servant who comes broken because broken hearts are closest to Him. There are nights when nothing changes outwardly, but something inside you shifts. You rise from prayer, still facing the same challenge, but with a calmer heart, a steadier breath, a renewed trust. That is not failure. That is progress. Because Allah sometimes strengthens you before He removes the storm. He prepares you internally before He opens the door externally. The Prophet taught us that Allah responds in ways we do not always recognize immediately. A delay is not a denial. A closed door may be protection. A heavy test may be elevation. When you pray in the Spirit, you learn to trust Allah's timing more than your own urgency. You begin to understand that Allah sees the full picture while you see only one frame. Shaitan will whisper, your prayer is not working. Ignore that voice. If prayer was useless, it would not be the first thing Allah commands and the last thing Shaitan wants you to hold on to. Prayer connects you to hope when despair tries to settle in. Prayer reminds you that even when people fail you, Allah never does. Pray when you feel strong, and pray even more when you feel weak. Pray when you have words, and pray when all you have are tears. Pray when you are grateful, and pray when you are confused. There is no wrong state to approach Allah except arrogance. Every other state is welcome at His door. When you persist in spiritual prayer, something always breaks. Sometimes chains of sin break. Sometimes cycles of anxiety break. Sometimes unhealthy attachments break. Sometimes the illusion of control breaks, allowing trust to grow. And sometimes, by Allah's mercy, the very obstacle you feared is removed in ways you never expected. Do not underestimate quiet, consistent prayer. Do not belittle whispered du'as made in the darkness. Do not think Allah is far because relief has not yet arrived. He is closer than your breath, more aware than your thoughts, more merciful than you can imagine. When prayer moves beyond routine and enters sincerity, it stops being a habit of the tongue and becomes a conversation of the soul. Many people pray because they know they should, because it is part of their identity, because it has been taught since childhood. But there is a difference between performing prayer and pouring your heart into it. Sincere prayer is when you stand before Allah without pretense, without rehearsed phrases meant to sound impressive, without hiding what you truly feel. It is when you come exactly as you are, tired if you are tired, confused if you are confused, hopeful if you are hopeful, broken if you are broken. Allah does not need polished words. He does not need long speeches or perfect expressions. He listens to the heart before the tongue even moves. When prayer becomes sincere, you stop worrying about how it sounds and focus on how it feels. You speak honestly, even if that honesty is messy. You admit that you do not understand what is happening in your life. You admit that you are afraid, that you feel weak, that you feel overwhelmed. This honesty is not a lack of faith. It is the essence of faith, because you are acknowledging that only Allah can hold what you cannot carry. Routine prayer can sometimes become mechanical. The body stands, the lips move, but the heart is elsewhere. Sincere prayer pulls the heart back into the moment. It forces you to slow down, to feel the weight of what you are saying, to recognize who you are standing before. When you say that Allah is the most merciful, you begin to remember moments when mercy reached you in ways you did not deserve. When you asked for guidance, you remember the times you were lost and somehow found your way again. This awareness deepens the connection and makes prayer alive. Praying beyond words means understanding that silence can also be a form of worship. There are moments when words fail, when pain is too deep to articulate. In those moments, simply sitting before Allah, letting tears fall, letting the heart speak without sound, is a powerful form of du'a. Allah understands the language of tears. He understands the sighs you release when no one is listening. He understands the heaviness in your chest, even when you cannot explain it to yourself. Sincerity also means removing expectations from prayer. Many people come to Allah with a specific outcome already fixed in their minds. They pray with conditions, with deadlines, with hidden demands. When the answer does not arrive in the way they expect, disappointment creeps in. But sincere prayer is about surrender, not control. It is about trusting that Allah's response, whatever form it takes, is rooted in wisdom and mercy. You ask because He told you to ask, and you trust because He promised to respond. When prayer is sincere, it begins to change you internally. You may not see immediate changes in your situation, but you notice subtle shifts in your heart. You become more patient. You become more reflective. You become less reactive. You start responding to difficulties with du'a instead of panic. This internal transformation is often the first sign that your prayer is being accepted, even if the external situation remains the same for a while. Sincere prayer also strips away pride. When you truly turn to Allah, you recognize your duʿāqq and dance on Him. You realize that strength, success, health, and stability are not guaranteed by your effort alone. This realization humbles the heart and softens it. A softened heart is more receptive to guidance, more open to correction, more aware of blessings that were previously overlooked. There is a special sweetness in prayer when it is sincere. It may come after a long struggle, after many dry moments where prayer felt heavy. But when sincerity settles in, even a short du'a can feel deeply fulfilling. You walk away feeling lighter, not because your problem has vanished, but because you have placed it in the care of the one who never fails. Praying beyond routine requires intention. It requires effort. It requires pushing past distractions, past laziness, past the urge to rush. It means choosing moments of quiet, choosing humility, choosing honesty over appearance. Over time, this kind of prayer builds a relationship with Allah that becomes a refuge. In moments of ease, prayer becomes gratitude. In moments of hardship, prayer becomes survival. In moments of confusion, prayer becomes clarity. This sincerity is what turns ordinary supplication into spiritual connection. It is what allows prayer to penetrate the heart rather than remain on the lips. It is what keeps a believer returning to Allah even when answers are delayed, because the prayer itself becomes a source of comfort. When prayer reaches this level, it is no longer about saying the right words, but about saying, standing in the right state before Allah, fully aware of His presence, fully dependent on His mercy, fully trusting His wisdom. Persistence in du'a is a reflection of how deeply a person believes that Allah is listening. When someone continues to ask, continues to return, continues to raise their hands, even after a long wait, it is not desperation alone. It is faith in action. Many people stop making dua, not because they no longer need Allah, but because they assume silence means rejection. In reality, silence is often an invitation to draw closer, to ask again, to trust more deeply. Life has a way of testing patience through delay. A person prays for relief, for healing, for provision, for clarity, and days turn into months, months into years. During this time, the heart is exposed. Doubt may creep in, frustration may grow, and the mind may begin to question whether the effort is worth it. But persistence in du'a is not about forcing an answer. It is about refusing to disconnect from Allah, regardless of the outcome you can see. Allah loves to hear the voice of His servant. He loves when a believer returns again and again, not with entitlement, but with humility. Each repeated du'a is an act of worship on its own. Even if the words are the same, the heart is never in exactly the same state. With every return, something is being refined. Sometimes it is patience. Sometimes it is sincerity. Sometimes it is reliance. Sometimes it is acceptance. Giving up on du'a can quietly. We harden the heart. When a person stops asking, they often start carrying their burdens alone. They rely only on their own strength, their own planning, their own limited perspective. Persistence keeps the heart connected to divine support. It reminds the believer that they are not alone in their struggle, even when no human seems to understand what they are going through. There is wisdom in repetition. When you ask Allah for the same thing repeatedly, you are not informing Him of your need. He already knows. You are reminding yourself of who controls the outcome. You are acknowledging again and again that no door opens unless Allah allows it. This repetition weakens arrogance and strengthens humility. It shifts the heart from demanding to trusting. Sometimes Allah delays because the timing is not right. Sometimes He delays because what you are asking for in its current form may harm you. Sometimes He delays because He wants to give you something better. Persistence teaches the heart to remain respectful and hopeful even without immediate clarity. It trains the soul to believe in goodness beyond what it can currently imagine. There are people who made dua for years only to see the answer come in a way that made them grateful for every moment of waiting. At the time, the delay felt painful. Later, it felt protective. This understanding usually comes after patience has been exercised, not before. Persistence allows a person to reach that level of insight without abandoning their connection to Allah along the way. Shaitan works hard to make people tired of asking. He whispers that nothing is changing, that prayer is pointless, that others receive answers while you remain waiting. These whispers are meant to sever the relationship between the servant and their Lord. Persistence in du'a is a form of resistance. It is a way of saying that no matter how long it takes, the door of Allah is the only door worth standing at. Repeated du'a also changes how a person responds to hardship. Instead of reacting with anger or despair, they begin to respond with prayer. This does not remove the pain, but it gives the pain direction. It turns suffering into communication. It transforms waiting into worship. Over time, the heart becomes more stable, less shaken by uncertainty, more anchored in trust. Even unanswered du'a is never wasted. Every supplication is recorded. Every tear is seen. Every moment of patience is valued. Sometimes the answer is stored for the hereafter. Sometimes it appears as protection from a harm you never knew was approaching. Sometimes it arrives as strength to endure what could not be removed. Persistence keeps the believer open to all these forms of response without narrowing their understanding of acceptance. Continuing to make du'a during hardship is an act of courage. It means choosing hope over bitterness, faith over frustration. It means believing that Allah's mercy is not limited by time and that His wisdom is not ND by human expectation. When a person persists, even when the heart feels heavy, even when the situation seems unchanged, that persistence itself becomes a sign of closeness to Allah. The believer who persists learns that du'a is not only about receiving what is asked for, but about who they become while asking. Patience deepens, reliance strengthens, faith matures, the heart becomes familiar with turning to Allah first rather than as a last resort. Over time, the struggle no longer feels like a barrier between the servant and Allah, but a bridge that keeps them returning again and again, with hands raised and a heart that refuses to disconnect. When people think of things breaking through prayer, they often imagine external obstacles collapsing, illnesses disappearing, debts being cleared, or situations suddenly changing. But often the first thing Allah allows to break is not outside of you, but within you. Spiritual prayer has a way of reaching the inner layers of the heart, touching fears that have been hidden for years, confronting doubts that were never spoken, and loosening the grip of emotions that quietly control behavior. Before Allah changes circumstances, He often changes the one facing them. Fear can become a prison without visible walls. A person may fear failure, fear loss, fear judgment, fear being alone, fear the future. These fears shape decisions, limit growth, and drain peace. When a person prays sincerely and spiritually, these fears are brought into light. Standing before Allah forces honesty. You begin to realize how much fear has been directing your life and how little trust has been guiding it. This realization itself can feel uncomfortable, but it is the beginning of freedom. Spiritual prayer weakens fear by reminding the heart of who is truly in control. When you repeatedly acknowledge Allah's power, knowledge, and mercy, the things you once feared begin to shrink in comparison. You remember that no harm reaches you without Allah's permission, and that no benefit comes except by His will. This does not remove all fear instantly, but it shifts its place. Fear no longer sits on the throne of your heart. Trust begins to challenge it, slowly but steadily. Many inner struggles are fueled by the need for control. People want certainty, timelines, guarantees. They want to know how things will unfold. When life refuses to provide these answers, anxiety grows. Spiritual prayer confronts this illusion of control. When you raise your hands and ask Allah for help, you are admitting that you do not have full control, and that admission is powerful. It breaks the ego that insists on managing everything alone. As the ego softens, the heart becomes more receptive. You begin to see your situation differently. Instead of viewing hardship as punishment, you begin to see it as a test, a lesson, or even a gift in disguise. This shift in perspective does not happen overnight, but it begins with consistent spiritual prayer. Over time, fear of the hardship is replaced with curiosity about what Allah is teaching you through it. Inner fear is also tied to attachment. People become deeply attached to outcomes, people, roles, or identities. When these attachments are threatened, fear intensifies. Spiritual prayer helps loosen these attachments by recentering the heart on Allah. You start to realize that everything else in life is temporary, changeable, and dependent on Him. This realization can feel like loss at first, but it ultimately brings peace because the heart is no longer anchored to what can be taken away. Breaking inner fear does not mean becoming emotionless or fearless in a human sense. It means fear no longer paralyzes you. You still feel concern, but it does not stop you from moving forward. You still feel uncertainty, but it does not drown you in despair. Spiritual prayer gives the heart a place to release fear safely, without judgment, without shame. In that release, fear loses its grip. Sometimes what breaks is not fear alone, but old narratives about yourself. You may have told yourself that you are weak, unlucky, incapable, or unworthy. These narratives shape how you approach life and how you interpret hardship. Through prayer, Allah reminds you of your true worth as His servant. You begin to see yourself not through past failures or current struggles, but through the lens of divine care and purpose. As inner fear breaks, a quiet strength emerges. It is not loud or boastful. It is a certainty that whatever happens, Allah is with you. This certainty changes how you respond to challenges. You become less reactive and more reflective. You stop panicking at every setback and start asking what is being asked of you in this moment. This inner stability is often the real breakthrough people overlook. External problems may still exist, but they no longer define your emotional state. You carry them differently. The heart feels lighter even when the load remains. This is not because the problem has lost its importance, but because it has lost its power over you. Spiritual prayer reshapes the inner landscape, making space for patience, trust, and resilience to grow. When inner fear breaks, hope takes its place. Hope does not deny difficulty, but it refuses to believe that difficulty is the end of the story. Through continued prayer, the heart learns to expect goodness from Allah, even when the path is unclear. This expectation itself becomes a source of strength, allowing the believer to keep moving, keep trusting, and keep turning back to Allah with a heart that is no longer imprisoned by fear, but grounded in reliance on the one who never abandons His servants' trusting. Allah's timing is one of the greatest challenges for the human heart, because the heart is impatient while divine wisdom is precise. People live by clocks, calendars, deadlines, and expectations, while Allah operates beyond time, seeing the beginning, the middle, and the end all at once. When something is delayed, the heart often assumes something is wrong, either with the prayer, the person, or the worthiness of the request. Learning to trust Allah's timing requires unlearning the habit of measuring success by speed. Urgency comes from fear. It comes from the worry that if something does not happen now, it may never happen at all. The heart imagines worst-case scenarios and pressures the soul into anxiety. Trusting Allah means recognizing that nothing meant for you will miss you, and nothing not written for you can be forced into existence. This understanding does not remove desire, but it tempers desperation. It allows a person to want something deeply without letting that desire consume their peace. Allah's wisdom is often hidden in delay. A person may pray for something believing it will bring happiness, stability, or relief, while Allah knows that receiving it too soon would bring harm, distraction, or loss. The delay then becomes protection, even though it does not feel like it at the time. Trusting divine wisdom means believing that Allah sees dangers you cannot see and opportunities you cannot yet imagine. Human urgency often leads to comparison. When others receive what you are waiting for, the heart can feel overlooked. Questions arise about fairness and favor. Trusting Allah's wisdom means understanding that every journey is unique, every test is tailored, and every blessing arrives in the form and time that suits the individual soul. What looks like success in another person's life may be a test you were spared from. And what looks like delay in your life may be preparation for something greater. Trusting Allah does not mean passivity. It does not mean abandoning effort or ignoring responsibility. It means doing your part with sincerity while leaving the outcome to Allah. You strive, you plan, you work, you pray, and then you release the need to control the results. This balance is difficult, because the ego wants certainty and immediate reward. But spiritual maturity is found in effort without obsession over outcomes. When urgency dominates the heart, disappointment becomes frequent. Expectations are placed on timelines that were never promised. Trusting Allah's timing frees the heart from constant disappointment by shifting focus from when to why. Instead of asking why something has not happened yet, the heart begins to ask what it is being taught during the waiting. This shift transforms waiting from wasted time into meaningful growth. Waiting has a way of refining intention. When something takes time, the heart is forced to examine why it wants it. Is it for ego, validation, or comparison, or is it truly beneficial? Over time, some desires fade, some change, and some become clearer. Trusting Allah during this process ensures that when something finally arrives, the heart is ready to receive it responsibly. Many people look back on their lives and realize that the moments they once resented were actually turning points. The rejection that felt painful led to a better path. The delay that felt unbearable protected them from regret. The unanswered prayer redirected them toward something more suitable. These realizations usually come with hindsight, but trust allows a person to live with peace even before clarity arrives. Allah's wisdom is not random. It is intentional, detailed, and merciful. When you trust His timing, you stop fighting reality and start flowing with it. You accept that your understanding is limited while His knowledge is complete. This acceptance reduces inner conflict. The heart stops arguing with what is and begins to settle into reliance. Urgency can also lead to spiritual burnout. Constantly feeling like something must happen now drains emotional and spiritual energy. Trusting Allah allows the heart to rest. It does not mean the desire disappears, but it means the heart is no longer tense around it. This calmness strengthens faith, because faith thrives in patience, not pressure. As trust deepens, gratitude grows. Even in waiting, you begin to notice what you already have. You become aware of small mercies, quiet blessings, and unseen protection. This awareness does not replace the desire for change, but it balances it. The heart learns to be content without being complacent. Trusting Allah's timing ultimately reshapes the relationship between the servant and the Creator. Allah is no longer seen only as the one who grants requests, but as the one who knows what is best at every moment. This shift deepens love, not just reliance. It allows the heart to say with sincerity that whatever Allah chooses, and whenever He chooses it, carries wisdom, mercy, and purpose beyond what the human mind can fully grasp. Deep connection with Allah is not formed through occasional moments of inspiration, but through consistent turning of the heart toward Him in every state. Transformation begins quietly, often unnoticed at first. A person may start praying more attentively, reflecting more deeply, or feeling a stronger urge to return to Allah during moments of weakness. These small shifts are signs that the heart is being worked on, shaped gently through connection rather than force. When a heart connects deeply with Allah, priorities begin to change. Things that once felt urgent lose some of their grip, and things that once felt distant become central. The heart starts valuing sincerity over appearance, obedience over approval, and peace over control. This does not mean the world disappears from concern, but it means the heart is no longer enslaved by it. Connection creates clarity, and clarity brings balance. One of the first transformations is awareness. A connected heart becomes more conscious of Allah's presence, not only in prayer, but throughout daily life. Decisions are made with greater mindfulness. Words are chosen more carefully. Reactions slow down. This awareness acts like an inner compass, gently correcting the heart before it drifts too far. The person begins to feel accountable, not out of fear alone, but out of love and respect for the one they feel close to. Deep connection also softens the heart. Hardness often comes from disappointment, unresolved pain, or repeated sin. When the heart turns to Allah consistently, it begins to release what it has been holding. Tears come more easily, not always from sadness, but from relief. The heart feels seen, heard, and understood. This softness allows compassion to grow, both toward oneself and toward others. Judgment lessens, patience increases. As the heart transforms, reliance shifts. Instead of leaning primarily on people, plans, or personal strength, the heart leans on Allah. This does not remove relationships or effort, but it places them in their proper position. When people disappoint, the heart does not collapse. When plans fail, the heart does not shatter. There is disappointment, but not devastation, because the foundation is no longer fragile. It is rooted in the one who does not change. Connection with Allah also exposes inner contradictions. A person may realize that they ask for guidance but resist change, or ask for peace while holding on to resentment. This awareness can be uncomfortable, but it is necessary for growth. Allah does not expose these contradictions to shame the servant, but to heal them. Through continued connection, the heart learns to align intentions with actions, desires with values. Transformation through connection is not always dramatic. Often it is subtle. You notice that you recover faster from hardship. You notice that temptations feel weaker. You notice that gratitude comes more naturally. You notice that even when life is difficult, despair does not take over as it once did. These are signs of a heart being strengthened quietly, steadily, through remembrance and reliance. A connected heart also learns acceptance, not resignation, but calm acceptance of what Allah decrees. This acceptance brings peace even when answers are unclear. The heart learns to say that if this is what Allah has chosen for now, then there is wisdom in it, even if it is hidden. This mindset does not eliminate effort, but it removes inner resistance, which is often a greater source of pain than the situation itself. As connection deepens, the heart becomes more resilient. Trials still hurt, but they do not define identity. Failure becomes a lesson rather than a label. Success becomes a responsibility rather than a source of pride. The heart remains grounded because it knows where it belongs. This sense of belonging to Allah gives the believer strength that does not depend on circumstances. The transformation of the heart also affects how one views others. A heart connected to Allah recognizes that everyone is struggling in some way. This awareness increases mercy. Forgiveness becomes easier, not because hurt is ignored, but because the heart understands the value of letting go. Holding on to anger feels heavier than releasing it. Connection teaches the heart that peace is worth more than being right. Over time, the heart begins to crave closeness to Allah. Prayer becomes a refuge rather than a duty. Du'a becomes a conversation rather than a request list. Remembrance becomes comfort rather than repetition. This craving is a sign of transformation, showing that the heart has tasted something it does not want to lose. Even in moments of weakness, the connected heart knows where to return. Sin does not lead to despair, but to repentance. Mistakes do not lead to abandonment, but to humility. The relationship with Allah becomes dynamic, alive, and real. The heart no longer seeks perfection, but sincerity. This deep connection reshapes identity. The believer no longer defines themselves solely by roles, achievements, or struggles, but by their relationship with Allah. This identity brings stability in a changing world. When things are taken away, the core remains intact. When blessings are given, gratitude increases rather than entitlement. Transformation through deep connection is ongoing. The heart is never finished, never complete, always in need of turning back. To Allah. Each return strengthens the bond. Each moment of remembrance deepens the roots. Over time, the heart becomes a place where trust outweighs fear, hope outweighs despair, and reliance outweighs anxiety, shaped continuously by a connection that grows stronger with every sincere turning toward the one who created it.